Ethereum's explosive growth over the past few years is hard to overstate, increasing 2,500% since March 2020 and outpacing Bitcoin's growth by 4 times over that time. And obviously, if the price kept on increasing like that, it wouldn't be hard to retire on your Ethereum holdings, and there are plenty of examples of crypto millionaires up to this point. But with cryptos now solidly a part of the mainstream, there hasn't been much discussion about how cryptos play into retirement. In this video, we'll go over how you can use Ethereum to generate consistent passive income to fund your lifestyle using staking, talk about how much Ethereum could be worth in both a best case and a more middle of the road scenario over the next 5 years, and discuss different ways you can reach retirement even sooner with Ether using techniques such as coast-fi or location arbitrage. And this video may help you realize that you don't need nearly as much money in Ethereum as you think to one day retire. So hit the like button if you want, and let's start by covering how Ether token can fit into your retirement. Now first off, I'm obviously not a financial advisor, I'm just a guy on the internet, so nothing here is financial advice. But the first step to figuring out how much Ether you need is figuring out how much money you need to live off of. Now obviously me living in Chicago is going to cost a lot more per year than say someone living in Cambodia. So depending on where you live, this number could vary wildly. But if we start by using my own numbers, I have this spreadsheet here of my average monthly income and spending after taxes. You can see in orange here my expenses, and at the bottom my expenses plus savings exactly equals the amount that I bring in every month. And on the top right we can see my monthly expenses total up to $3,327. Now I didn't just make these numbers up, and these aren't a hard limit on my spending. I just got these as the general numbers that I spend each month from tracking my spending over the past several months. And you can do the same thing using an app like EveryDollar, which is what I use, or a service that adds up your transactions automatically, like mint.com or You Need a Budget, which is often abbreviated as YNAB. So we have my monthly budget of $3,300, and for a more broad comparison, we can also look at the average monthly budget for a single person in the US, which is $3,189 according to NerdWallet. So the question now is, how much Ethereum do we need to generate $3,300 per month for me, or $3,189 for the average person in the US? Well, the average length of retirement according to the US Census Bureau is 18 years. So if you just saved enough to cover $3,327 per month, times 12 months times 18 years, you would need $719,000 to cover retirement spending, or 216 Ether tokens. And for your average single American, you would need $3,189 per month times 12 months times 18 years, or $689,000, which comes out to 206 ETH tokens. Now that would cover you even if your Ether did not increase in value at all during the 18 years. But let's be honest, most people watching this channel are not your average retiree at 63 years old. So in that case, how much Ether would you need to retire much longer than 18 years? Like maybe forever. How can Ether generate enough passive income to cover your lifestyle for the rest of your life? Well, luckily, if you want to generate passive income using Ethereum, it's actually a lot easier to do than with other financial assets like real estate or even stocks. And this is because Ethereum has the ability for holders of Ether token to stake those tokens in exchange for rewards. The way this works is you can loan your tokens to what's known as a validator on the network. And that validator uses your tokens to secure the network, basically approving which transactions do and don't go through. By staking your Ether token, as of the time I'm filming this, you'll be paid out 5.01% on a yearly basis. Or if you are very technical and you hold at least 32 ETH tokens, you can actually act as a validator yourself and you will earn 5.6% per year. But unless you already know what it takes to act as an Ethereum validator and you're pretty comfortable with the technical side of crypto, you're probably better off just sticking with the 5% payout from staking your crypto. So if we take our monthly expenses and divide it by the monthly amount we would get from staking Ether, we can see that we would need $798,000 to cover my personal budget, or $765,000 to cover the average single US person for life. That comes out to 240 Ethereum for me, or 230 Ethereum being staked by your average person. Now I should be clear that staking is technically only available for Ethereum 2.0, which is the new and improved version of Ethereum that is slowly rolling out. Currently it operates as an independent chain from the main Ethereum chain, but the two chains will merge together in the future, an event the Ethereum website estimates will happen in Q1 or maybe even Q2 of 2022. Now, one caveat here is that the 5% staking rewards that are currently being paid out will not necessarily stay that high forever. If enough people start staking, that will drive the rewards down. But if we do see an uptick in people staking, that probably also means more people are buying into the Ethereum ecosystem, thereby increasing the underlying value of the tokens. So even though the percentage payout will drop, you should continue to earn a similar dollar amount each month. And even if that amount does decline, it should be offset by your increased value in your holdings. But fintech, I hear you say, there's two things I'm certain about in this world, and those are death and taxes. And while I'm not an expert at existential dread, or taxes for that matter, we should spend a second there. Right now in the US at least, there hasn't been any official guidance from the IRS on paying taxes for staked cryptos, even though you do have to pay income tax on mining cryptos. Now, I would assume you'd want to be conservative and pay full income taxes on any staking earnings, but there is a chance in the future that they could be treated more similar to dividends or even capital gains, depending on how regulators decide to treat it, assuming regulators ever catch up to all the innovations happening in crypto in the first place. But if we assume a regular income tax on staking, that would mean on a monthly basis, I would need closer to $3,800 a month for my budget, and the average single person would need closer to $3,700 per month. So at a 5% staking rate, I would need $915,000 saved up, or the average single person would need $882,000, equivalent to 275 Ethereum or 265 Ethereum respectively. So that's a lot of money to have put away right now. But that's assuming there's no change in the Ether token's price over time. But now let's talk about the real way Ethereum has created the vast majority of its value since its creation, and that is through the price of the Ether token appreciating. Ether's price is up 2,500% since March 2020, and it's up around 200% from 1 year ago. So let's look at both a best case scenario for Ethereum's future valuation in 5 years and a more middle of the road scenario. Now, there are a couple of different ways that we could try to value Ethereum's future price. We could look at its potential to upset Bitcoin as the largest crypto, figuring that its active developer community and greater flexibility to run decentralized apps or dApps, and smart contracts enabling everything from games to digital art to real estate NFTs would be enough to give it an edge over the original crypto. This would roughly double Ethereum's current $400 billion market cap to over $820 billion, giving Ethereum a price of $6,800 per Ether token, which means that today we would need to save roughly half the amount of Ether that we calculated earlier. But let's also look at the best case scenario for Ether going forward. The highest price I've seen anyone estimate for Ethereum with any sort of reasonable backing comes from ex-ARK Invest analyst James Wang. Wang worked for celebrity investor Cathie Wood's ARK Invest fund for 6 years as an analyst, as well as a product manager for Nvidia for 9 years, giving him some exposure both to finance and technology. Wang talked about the opportunity for Ethereum in the DeFi space, or decentralized finance. The idea being that Ethereum could enable the replacement of much of the world's slow, inefficient financial infrastructure that gives power to big banks on Wall Street with a decentralized one that could process transactions in seconds rather than 3 to 5 business days. He offered one way you could value Ethereum.
Narrowly speaking, you could value Ethereum's opportunity in terms of the scale of the financial system if you just look at DeFi, and that's roughly speaking about $3 trillion a year. That's the amount the global banking and auditing system it generates per year, about $3 trillion.
So if Ethereum could capture 0.1% of that system's revenue, it would hold the value of around $4,000 per token according to Wang. But if it held more than that, let's say 1% of the overall financial system,
0.1% of that revenue, it would be worth about $4,000 a token. If it captures 1%, it would be worth $40,000 per Ethereum.
And obviously, if Ethereum captured substantially more than that, its value could be even higher. Now, this is admittedly a very bullish take. But if Ethereum did manage to capture 1% of the global financial system's revenues in 5 years and increase its value by 12x to $40,000 per token, you would only need to hold 1/12 of the Ether tokens that we calculated earlier. So 23 Ether token for me personally, equivalent to $76,000, or 22 Ether for your average single person in the US, equivalent to just under $74,000 today. But if we take a moderate view of Ethereum, and let's say it only only increases by the same amount that the stock market has over its long history. Well, in 5 years, we would expect it to see a rise of around 50%. That would mean I would need 183 Ether for my budget, equivalent to $611,000, or 177 Ether for your average single person, equivalent to just over $588,000. Now I know what you're thinking. At least in the more moderate case of rising prices, that's still a lot of money to save. But luckily, there are two ways you can greatly reduce the amount of Ethereum that you need to hold in retirement. The two ways we're going to talk about here are CoastFi and location arbitrage, and I'll walk through how these two techniques could save you from needing to save hundreds of thousands of dollars and reduce the time you need to wait to achieve retirement by years. CoastFi, also called BaristaFi or Coast Financial Independence, is when you build up enough money so that when you invest it today, it will grow into enough money to cover you in retirement at an older age. This means that you are not retired, you will still need to earn money to eat and live on, but you don't need to save any more money for future security. And yeah, while at first this seems maybe not that impressive, how are you retired if you still have to work? But the practical effects of CoastFi are actually super impactful. First of all, how much money do you really need to survive on? Imagine you're living like a college student on instant noodles and an air mattress. It's probably less money than you think. So really one of the big reasons that people pursue high-stress jobs is just to impress other people or save more of their money. But if you've reached CoastFi, you don't need to save money ever again. There's this famous story that talks about a rich businessman on vacation in Mexico. So the story goes that one day there's this rich American businessman who's on a vacation in Mexico, and he runs into a fisherman who's unloading his fish from his boat. The businessman decides to stop and talk to him for a second, so he asks the man, "What do you do on a normal day?" The man says, "Well, I usually go out, I fish in the morning, maybe I take a nap with my wife in the afternoon, and maybe I'll play some guitar in the evening." The businessman says, "Oh, well, why don't you use the extra time in your evening to go out fishing some more? Then you could save up the extra time to get more fish and maybe hire a second fisherman." The fisherman looks at the businessman for a while and says, "Okay, but what would I do then?" The businessman says, "Well, once you have 2 fishermen, you can slowly start to build out a 3rd fisherman, then a 4th, and buy more and more boats until eventually you have a whole fleet of fishermen working for you. Then, once you have enough scale, you can start to sell your fish directly to the consumer, cut out the middleman. Suddenly you're going to have so much profit that you won't know what to do with." The fisherman looks at the businessman again and says, "Okay, but what would I do then?" The businessman says, "Well, once you build up enough money, you can start saving it into a retirement account. And once you build that up to a large enough number, you could be totally financially free." And for a 3rd time, the fisherman looks at the businessman and goes, "Okay, that all sounds great, but what would I do then?" And the businessman says, "Okay, well, once you have all that money, you can spend your time doing what you want. Maybe you can go out fishing in the mornings, have a nap with your wife in the afternoon, and play guitar in the evenings." The point of this story is you don't necessarily need to save up a huge nest egg to do what you want. So if you can go and start living the life that you want right now, why not do it? In order to reach CoastFi, you just need to figure out how much money invested today would grow into enough money to live on in retirement. Well, in retirement, as we saw earlier, the average person needs around $689,000 or 206 ETH to last the usual 18 years of retirement, and that's without even needing to stake or anything like that. You could probably get that number a little bit lower if you really tried. So how much would you need to stake in Ethereum today to get to $689,000 by age 65? Well, we can do a quick compound interest calculator to figure that out. So if you're 25 years old and you invest $100,000 at a 5% interest rate for 40 years, and we ignore inflation by assuming that Ethereum's price will hedge against inflation, we would have $700,000 by retirement age, meaning $100,000 or 30 Ethereum at age 25 would be enough for the average person to CoastFi on Ethereum, which is obviously a lot more attainable than the nearly $900,000 number we calculated earlier. Now again, this is just an example. You probably shouldn't bet your entire retirement entirely on Ethereum 40 years in the future, but this example shows how powerful CoastFi can be in making retirement attainable for the average person. And tying in with the Mexico story, we have the other way we can reduce the amount needed for retirement, and that is a concept known as location arbitrage. Obviously, it's way more expensive to live in Chicago than in most places on Earth, but you may not realize how cheaply you can live in other areas of the world. I read a blog about someone who was able to live in Thailand for just over $500 per month, which means you'd only need to earn $6,000 per year to live there. So you could either CoastFi and just pick up a part-time job that pays $500 a month online, Or you could move there immediately, stake $120,000 worth of Ethereum or 36 tokens, and live off your Ether interest right now. Plus, one of the powers of cryptos is that it's not owned by any one country. So theoretically, you can use it to live in any country in the world. So we've covered a lot of scenarios there, but hopefully this video gives you some idea of how you could retire on Ethereum today, 5 years in the future, or even much farther out. I think one of my biggest problems with cryptos is that they can get overhyped a lot when people are trying to get views, and I'm sure some of my videos have even come across that way. But I do think they can have a place in someone's long-term retirement plans if you're smart about it. Just maybe don't make cryptos your entire retirement plan. But if you want to get $25 in free Bitcoin, you can check out Voyager, which is the crypto app that I use to buy and sell cryptos without the hassle of using a wallet. If you trade $100 worth of crypto with them after using my link, they will give you $25 in free Bitcoin. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.